I caught her cheating while I was shopping online for vacation packages to Bali to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. It was just an ordinary Tuesday evening, one of those quiet nights that usually slips by without a second thought. The house was eerily still, except for the hum of the refrigerator and some soft jazz playing from the smart speaker in the corner. I was lost in a sea of turquoise waters, infinity pools, and luxury villas on my laptop, eyeing the Royal Uluwatu package. It cost more than my first car, but I didn't care. After 25 years, Cynthia was my rock, my inspiration, and the heart of our life together. 25 years, a quarter of a century. In this day and age that felt like an eternity, we were a testament to lasting love. I wanted this trip to be the crowning jewel of our journey together. Just as I was about to hit book now, my world came crashing down with a sudden, persistent buzz. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and be among our first 1,000 subscribers. Now, back to the story. Cynthia had left her smartwatch charging on the kitchen island, a rare slip for her. She was usually the epitome of meticulousness when it came to her devices. Her phone was always face down, her laptop locked with biometric security, and her watch was typically strapped to her wrist like it was glued there. But she had hurried off to her yoga class, a new routine she had taken up a few months ago, claiming she needed to center her chakras and find inner peace. I admired her commitment and even splurged on fancy mats and organic leggings for her. But as I sat there, ready to book our dream getaway, the watch buzzed against the granite countertop, cutting through the jazz. I initially ignored it, thinking it was probably just a spam notification or a reminder from a meditation app. But then it buzzed again. And again. 3 quick taps. Curiosity is a double-edged sword. It can lead you to the truth or tear you apart. I got up, stretching my back, and walked over to silence the watch so I could focus on the travel insurance details. The screen lit up as I approached, and I was met with a notification from an app one didn't recognize, a flame icon glowing bright orange against the black screen. The message was short, harsh, and left no room for misunderstanding. I'm at the spot. Room 304. Don't keep me waiting. CYNN. The sender was simply listed as D. My heart didn't break right away. It just stalled. It felt like missing a step on a staircase in the dark. My mind raced, desperately trying to protect the narrative I had built over the last 25 years. Maybe D was just a yoga instructor. Maybe Room 304 was a new studio. But the tone felt all wrong, too familiar, too intimate. CYN. That was my nickname for her, one I had given her back when we were in college. Seeing it used by someone else felt like a violation, like someone had stolen a piece of our history. My hand shook as I reached for the watch. I knew her passcode. We had a no-secrets policy, or so I thought. 2-0-0-0, the year we met. I typed it in, half hoping she'd change it, half wishing she hadn't, so I could just walk away from this nightmare. The lock clicked open, and suddenly, I wasn't just looking at a notification anymore. I was staring into the abyss of a secret life. The app was a dating platform, specifically for discreet encounters. My stomach twisted, a mix of nausea and adrenaline. I scrolled through her message history. It went back months. While I was working late to pay down the mortgage, while I was planning surprise date nights, while I was bragging to friends about how lucky I was to have a wife who still looked at me with love, she was here, in this digital mess. The messages were explicit and humiliating, discussing things she claimed she was too tired for with me. But the most damning evidence wasn't just the sexting, it was the logistics. D had sent an address just 40 minutes ago, the Meridian Hotel, Lekki, a trendy, expensive hotel. I checked the timestamp. She had left the house 4 to 5 minutes ago. The math was painfully simple. I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling as I opened the location-sharing app we had for safety. I opened the map, my heart racing. The little blue dot representing Cynthia wasn't at the Lotus Flower Yoga Studio on Ekpabio Street. No, it was pulsing at the Meridian Hotel, exactly where D had told her to go. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the silence now deafening. The jazz felt like a funeral soundtrack. I glanced back at my laptop. The Royal Uluwatu package was still there, waiting for my confirmation. The contrast was jarring. On one screen, I was planning a celebration of loyalty. In my hand, I held proof of betrayal. Nausea washed over me, and I had to grip the countertop to steady myself. This wasn't a mistake. It was calculated. She had downloaded the app, made a profile, and set up a meeting. She had kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and walked out that door to meet a stranger. People often think they know how they would react in a situation like this. You see it in movies, the screaming matches, the thrown objects, the immediate confrontations. But real heartbreak, the kind that shakes you to your core, is quiet. It paralyzes you. I didn't scream or throw anything. Instead, a cold sense of detachment washed over me like a survival instinct. My brain was trying to compartmentalize the trauma, locking it away so I could function. I needed to be smart. If I confronted her now, she would just lie. She would gaslight me, claim it was a misunderstood text, say she was at the hotel for a massage. I needed more than just a text. I needed evidence. I took a deep breath, the air heavy in my lungs. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of every message on her watch. I scrolled through DS profile. No face, just a torso shot. Fit, tanned, younger. A wave of insecurity crashed over me, quickly followed by a wave of anger. I documented everything. The timestamps, the explicit messages, the address. Then, I carefully wiped the watch screen with my shirt to remove my fingerprints and place it back exactly where I found it. Walking back to my laptop, I saw that my session for the Bali trip had timed out. Session expired. It read, a fitting metaphor for my marriage. I didn't refresh the page. Instead, I opened a new tab. I wasn't planning vacations anymore. I was searching for divorce attorneys in our state and forensic data recovery services. But as I sat there, a darker thought crept in. If I blew this up tonight, I'd be the victim, the sad, betrayed husband. But I didn't want to be the victim. I wanted to be the one in control of this situation. She thought she was a player in this game, and I was just a background character. I glanced at the clock. She'd be home in an hour, probably smelling of shower gel to cover up the scent of another man, and pretending to be exhausted from yoga. Right then, I decided I wouldn't say a word. Not tonight. I'd let her think she was safe. I'd let her believe she'd gotten away with it. Because the worst thing would be thinking you hadn't been caught while the walls slowly closing around you. I shut my laptop, poured myself a double scotch, neat, and settled into the darkness of the living room, waiting for her to walk through the door. I needed to see her face when she came in. I needed to see if she could look me in the eye and lie without flinching. The buzz of the watch had stopped, but the countdown to the end of her world had just begun. The sound of a key turning in a lock is usually comforting, a signal of home and safety. But that night, as I sat in the darkened living room nursing my untouched scotch, the metallic scrape of the key sliding into the deadbolt felt more like the cocking of a gun. I checked my pulse on my wrist, steady enough, I suppose. I had spent the last hour crafting a mask for myself. If she was going to come home playing the role of the devoted wife returning from a calming yoga session, I would play the part of the doting husband, worn out from a long day of spreadsheets and suburban routine. I stood up, cleared my throat to steady my voice, and switched on the hallway lamp just as the door swung open. Cynthia walked in, yoga mat in hand, as if it were a shield. She looked flushed, her cheeks rosy in a way that, under normal circumstances, I'd attribute to a good workout. Now, though, I recognized it for what it truly was, the afterglow of betrayal. She was dressed in her Lululemon leggings and a loose tank top, her hair pulled back in a messy bun that looked like it had been hastily assembled. "Hey, honey," she said, breathless. She dropped her keys into the bowl with a noise that felt deafening in the quiet house and offered me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a practiced smile, a muscle memory of affection. "You're still up? I thought you'd be asleep by now." "Waiting for you," I replied, stepping closer. This was the first test. I leaned in to kiss her cheek, a masochistic move, but I needed to gather information. As our lips brushed against her skin, I inhaled deeply. I expected to smell the salty scent of sweat, but instead I got a whiff of something floral and expensive, hibiscus and white tea, the kind of fragrance you'd find in a high-end hotel. I recognized it because I had stayed at the Meridian Hotel 3 years ago for a conference. She hadn't even bothered to come home and shower, She must have washed them off her skin with their fancy body wash before slipping back into her yoga clothes. The audacity of it was almost impressive. "How was class?" I asked, pulling back just enough to look her in the eye. "Brutal." She lied effortlessly, rolling her shoulders in theatrical display of fatigue. The instructor, Sarah, made us hold Warrior 3 for what felt like 10 minutes. My quad's on fire. She walked past me into the kitchen, reaching for a glass of water. I watched her, marveling at her performance. Sarah didn't teach on Tuesday nights. I had checked the studio schedule online while I wiped my fingerprints off her smartwatch. Tuesday was restorative yin with a guy named Mike. She was layering lies on top of lies, constructing a skyscraper of deceit on a shaky foundation. "Well, you look great," I said, forcing warmth into my tone. "Whatever you're doing, it's clearly working." That night, lying next to her in bed felt like psychological torture. She fell asleep almost instantly, her breathing settling into a soft rhythm. Meanwhile, I lay rigid, staring at the ceiling fan that sliced through the shadows. Every time she shifted or her foot brushed against mine under the duvet, I felt a jolt of revulsion. But I didn't move away. I stayed right there, occupying the space I had earned over 25 years. My mind raced, flitting from the emotional wreckage to the tactical landscape. I realized that information is only powerful if you know how to wield it. If I confronted her now, armed with just photos of a watch screen, she could twist a narrative. She could say it was a prank or a misunderstanding. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to find out who D was and secure my assets before I fired the first shot. The next morning, I left for work at the usual time, but instead of heading to the office, I drove to a cafe 3 towns over, a place where I was sure I wouldn't bump into anyone we knew. I settled into a back booth, connected to their Wi-Fi through a VPN on my laptop. Rule number 1 of digital investigation: never leave a trace on your home network. The first couple of hours were spent researching the state's divorce laws. We lived in a no-fault state, which meant her infidelity wouldn't necessarily strip her of alimony, but it could influence the division of assets if I could prove she used marital funds to facilitate the affair. That expensive hotel room? If she paid for it, that was dissipation of marital assets. I needed her bank statements. Logging into our joint account, I found nothing. No charges to the Meridian Hotel. Smart move on her part. She was likely using a credit card I didn't know about, or maybe he was footing the bill. I shifted to the photos I had taken of her watch, transferring them into a secure, encrypted folder on a cloud drive she didn't have access to, cleverly naming the folder Tax Documents 2018 to ensure she'd never think to look there. As I zoomed in on the profile picture of D, I noticed it was a torso shot, headless, of course, designed to flaunt abs and a deep tan. It was a kind of image that litters dating apps, feeding the vanity of midlife crises everywhere. But as I stared at it, applying a filter to sharpen the image, something caught my eye. In the background of the photo, barely visible, was a piece of equipment that looked like a heavy-duty wet tile saw, specifically used for custom masonry. It sat against a distinct, unfinished wooden deck railing. My stomach dropped. The railing had a unique lattice pattern, a pattern I recognized because I had approved the design sketches for it 3 weeks ago. It was our deck. D wasn't just some random guy. D was someone who had been in my backyard. I quickly minimized the photo and pulled up the contract for the landscaping company we'd hired to renovate the patio for our anniversary party. Apex Outdoor Living. The foreman was a guy named Derek. D. Derek was 28, fit, and had that charming smile that made my wife giggle every time he asked for a glass of water. I felt a fool's blush heat my neck. It wasn't just cheating. It was a cliché. The bored housewife and the young, sweaty contractor. It was humiliatingly banal. But knowing his identity changed the game. It gave me leverage. I wasn't fighting a ghost anymore. I was fighting Derek from Apex Outdoor Living. I quickly did a background check on him. Public records can be a terrifyingly efficient tool if you know where to look. Derek had a record, a DUI 2 years ago, and a civil judgment for unpaid child support. He wasn't a romantic hero. He was a liability. And Cynthia, my brilliant, sophisticated Cynthia, was risking our multi-million-dollar life for a guy who couldn't pay for his own kids' diapers. I closed the laptop, the sadness replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I had a plan. The anniversary was just 3 weeks away. The Royal Uluwatu package to Bali was obviously off the table, but I couldn't cancel the celebration. No, the celebration would be the trap. I picked up my phone and called the jewelry store where I had been eyeing a diamond necklace for her. "Good morning, Mr. Debayo," the sales associate chirped. "Are you ready to pull the trigger on the pendant?" "Actually, I have a different request," I said, my voice smooth and authoritative. "I need a custom box made, and I need you to recommend a private investigator who specializes in digital forensics and physical surveillance. I want to buy a very specific kind of gift." I wasn't going to just divorce her. I was going to let her walk into her own destruction, step by step, wearing her Lululemon leggings and her counterfeit smile. As I drove home, I stopped to buy her favorite flowers. The game had officially begun, and unlike her, I knew the rules. When I walked into the house, I handed her the bouquet. "For the most beautiful woman in the world," I said, watching her expression shift from surprise to something that looked a lot like guilt. "What's this for?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. "Just because," I replied, leaning in to kiss her forehead. "And because I've been thinking about the anniversary. I want to make a speech. A big one. I want to invite everyone, including Derek and his crew. They've done such a great job on the deck. They should be there to celebrate the finished product. Don't you think?" I watched the color drain from her face. It was subtle, but it was a panic. "Oh, I don't know. Honey," she stammered. "Do we really want the workers there?" "I insist," I said, smiling the smile of a man who knows there's already one. "They are part of the family now." If fear had a smell, it wouldn't be the stench of sweat or the metallic tang of blood. In the suburbs, fear has a different scent, overcompensation. For the next 3 days, Cynthia transformed into the picture-perfect wife. She cooked elaborate dinners, risotto with truffles, seared scallops, dishes we typically reserve for special occasions. She asked about my day with an intensity that felt almost unsettling, and she suggested watching my favorite movies, sitting closer to me on the couch than she had in years. But I wasn't really watching the movie. I was focused on her hands. They were restless, picking at the hem of her blanket, her eyes darting to her phone every time it lit up, only to flip it face down as if it were toxic. She was terrified I knew something, yet paralyzed by the fear that maybe she was just being paranoid. That uncertainty was my greatest weapon. It was like the silence in a horror movie before the jump scare. The anticipation was doing more damage to her psyche than any accusation ever could. While she played the role of the perfect spouse, I was busy becoming the architect of her downfall. The gift I had asked for from the jeweler wasn't just a necklace. It was an introduction. On Thursday afternoon, I took an extended lunch break and drove to a nondescript office building downtown, wedged between a dry cleaner and a notary public. This was the office of Marcus Obinna, the private investigator the jeweler had recommended. Obinna didn't look like a classic detective. He looked more like an accountant, bland, bespectacled, and utterly forgettable. That was his strength. He slid a manila folder across the desk before I even sat down. "I ran a preliminary check on your guy," Obinna said, his voice flat. "Derek's drowning in debt. 2 maxed-out credit cards. A truck lease is 3 months behind on. He's looking for a payday, Mr. Debayo, and it seems he thinks he's found one in your wife." Hearing a stranger say it outright made my stomach churn, but it also solidified my resolve. This wasn't love. It was a transaction. Cynthia was just a target to him, a lonely, affluent woman he could charm into covering his bills. I handed Obinna a thick envelope of cash. "I don't just want a background check," I told him. "I want eyes and ears. I want to know what they say when they think no one's listening." Obinna nodded and opened a drawer, pulling out 3 small, black devices that looked like USB chargers. High-fidelity audio recorders, WI-FI enabled. They upload to a cloud server in real time. Just plug them in, and they'll never stop listening. I returned home with those chargers in my pocket, feeling like a spy in my own house. The installation was laughably easy. I plugged one behind the couch in the living room, another in the master bedroom behind the nightstand, and the most important one in the kitchen, right near the island where she liked to sip wine and text him. I was building a digital surveillance system. Now, I just needed the players to take the stage. And as luck would have it, the lead actor was about to make an entrance. Saturday morning arrived with the over-the-top cheeriness of a spring day. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and Derek's truck, a lifted black beast that screamed overcompensation, rumbled into my driveway. He was there to do the final touch-ups on the deck before the party. I watched from the upstairs window as he jumped out of the truck, wearing a tight t-shirt and tool belt, strutting around like he owned the place. He had no idea the landlord was watching. I headed downstairs, grabbing 2 cold bottles of water from the fridge. I needed to see him up close. Stepping out onto the deck, the fresh smell it would stain filled the air. "Derek!" I called out, putting on my best friendly host voice. He jumped slightly, turning around. For a brief moment, I saw panic flash in his eyes, the instinctive fear of a predator caught in the open, but he quickly smoothed it over with a lopsided grin. "Mr. Betrayal, good to see you, sir," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. He extended a hand, and I took it. His grip was firm and calloused. I squeezed just a bit harder than necessary, holding the handshake for 2 seconds too long. I wanted him to feel my presence. I wanted him to wonder. "Call me Robert," I said, handing him the water. "Cynthia tells me you've been working hard. She says you're very thorough." Derek took the water, his throat working as he swallowed nervously. Yeah, we try to do good work. The deck is solid. It'll last a long time." "I hope so," I said, lowering my voice to a more conversational yet conspiratorial tone. "You know, 25 years is a long time to build something, like a marriage, a house, a reputation. It takes a lifetime to build it, but here's the funny thing. It only takes 1 loose screw, 1 rotten plank, and the whole thing can come crashing down." I stared at him, unblinking. I'd hate for anyone to get hurt because of a little structural failure. Derek's hand paled slightly. He laughed nervously, a sound that felt like it was trying to escape. "Right. Yeah, absolutely. Safety first." He didn't know if I was talking about the deck or him. That was the point. I gave him a friendly clap on the shoulder, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Make sure it's perfect for the party, Derek. I want everyone to see just what you've been up to." I went back inside, leaving him sweating on the deck. My heart raced with excitement. I walked into the kitchen and pulled up the app for the audio recorders on my phone. The sound quality was crystal clear. I could hear Derek's heavy breathing outside and the birds chirping. Just then, I heard Cynthia's footsteps coming down the stairs. I tucked my phone in my pocket and turned to the sink, pretending to wash a glass. "Is he here?" she asked, her voice tight. "Derek?" "Yeah, just gave him some water," I said casually. "Nice kid. A little jumpy, though." She hovered by the fridge, looking conflicted. She wanted to go outside. She wanted to see him. I could see the magnetic pull, the addiction itching under her skin. "I should probably go check the, railing height," she stammered. "Make sure it's code compliant." "Good idea," I said, drying my hands. "You're so attentive to the details, honey." I watched her walk out the sliding glass door. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I pulled my phone back out and put in my earbuds. Tapping on the kitchen or deck feed, I heard the sliding door open, followed by Cynthia's whispered voice, urgent and hushed. "What did he say to you?" she hissed. "Nothing," Derek replied, sounding rattled. He was just talking about loose screws and things crashing down. CYN, he was looking at me like he wanted to gut me. "Stop being paranoid," she soothed him, though her voice wavered. "He's just stressed about the party. He can't know. He bought me flowers. Derek, he's planning a speech." "I don't like it," Derek grunted. "I feel like a sitting duck out here." "Just finish the job and get out," she whispered. Then a silence, a rustling of clothes, the unmistakable sound of a kiss. In my own kitchen, on the deck I paid for. "I miss you," she added. I pulled the earbuds out, my hand trembling with a cold, focused rage. Hearing that betrayal in high definition hit differently. But as I stood there, staring at the tax documents 2018 folder on my laptop, I realized I needed one final piece to complete the puzzle. They were communicating somehow when they weren't together.